years. You with me? We're about like 408 hours or so away from that fateful ceremony known as commencement, where we hear that fateful melody. Thanks, Jake. Make some noise for Jake Mokes, everybody. So anyway, we hear that fateful melody, and then we go up and we receive a piece of paper that's not technically our diploma, but that's fine because we'll be getting our diploma really soon in the mail. And then we move a tassel from one side of our face to the other side of our face, indicating that we are now eclectic, erudite, educated individuals. So, for those of you who have no clue who on earth I am or why on earth the chapel staff has decided to subject you to my ramblings this morning, my name is Robert Mech. I like long walks on Singing Beach, and I'm majoring in physics. Woo! Everybody's favorite subject. So, you may have seen me across campus doing things like beating the drums with God's Chosen Gospel Choir, who from, there we go, or jazz ensemble. Jazz gets a little love, okay, that's good. You may have seen me giving tours and, coming up to your classrooms and saying things like, "Here you see students in their natural habitat. Please do not tap on the glass, point, or make any loud noises or sudden movements." I may have been a teaching assistant for one of your physics classes or the scientific enterprise. Everybody loves that course. Anyway, it's great to be here. Thanks a lot to the chapel staff. Can we have a round of applause for them real quick? Because they're all wonderful people. And the way they've nurtured me in my 4 years of being here. So basically what I would like to share with you today is three things, and those things are identity, love, and worship. And I've been given 10 minutes to do that, and 10 minutes is not quite enough time, so while we're on the topic of time, let's start there. Time. So time is an interesting thing. It's a scary thing because it's all that stands between us now and the realm of eternity. Now, Michael Caine's character in Interstellar says that all old physicists are afraid of time, and as a young, sort of aspiring physicist of sorts, I can kind of relate to this. I mean, actually, as an American male of almost 23 years, I've lived out about 29% of my expected lifespan. And that's a pretty scary thought sometimes. I mean, what is this life that we have? I mean, it's like, I don't know, a vapor, right? That's what it says in Ecclesiastes, right? Life is just like, it's a vapor. It's here today, gone tomorrow. It's only nitrogen, folks. It's perfectly safe. But anyway, and what's the significance of this vapor? Does it mean anything? How am I using it? Am I using it to glorify God? What does it all mean in the end? And this question used to really depress me. It used to make me deeply anxious. I used to look on this question with despair as I looked towards a completely uncertain future rather than with excitement at the possibilities for God-honoring lifestyles. I know I use the word lifestyles, but God-honoring life, So anyway, identity. I'm not exactly sure why the chapel staff selected me, but it definitely wasn't because I have some extraordinary life story. I mean, I was born at 6:29 a.m. on May 21st, 1996 at the Kennebec River Valley Medical Center in Augusta, Maine. So, it's not exactly the most remarkable thing you've ever heard. My dad's first words were, "He's huge." Not my dad's first words, but like when I was born, the first thing he said. Yeah, so anyway, not exactly extraordinary. I mean, I lived a pretty normal life, right? Although I have learned, don't mention the fact I'm homeschooled and I'm an only child together, because then people usually react with something along the lines of, "Oh, really? I'm so sorry. Did you know that there were other children your age?" Like, yes, it's fine. Okay, look, my parents did an amazing job. They're actually right there, so give a round. Make some noise for my parents, ladies and gentlemen. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. But anyway, if I were to be asked about my identity, who am I? Who is Robert Mech? All along throughout my life. In high school, for example, when I was maybe 16 years old, I probably would have said, well, I'm really into videography, I'm really into music, I'm really into speech and debate, I love communicating with other people, I love, I'm probably going to major in like comm arts or poli-sci or one of these kind of things and do that sort of thing. Those are all things I did, right? A lot of us identify with what we do. But then I chose on a physics major at the end of my freshman year, which, by the way, that's like crazy. Don't do that. It's really hard. It's totally been worth it, but I hadn't done math in like 3 years. I knew that I was interested in it, but I always thought, well, I'll leave that to the smart people. And that's pretty much how all physics majors feel, am I right? Like, it's really hard. Sometimes I jump into things that way. One of my favorite chapel memories actually is when Tom Haugen was talking about life philosophies, and he said, what are people after? Everybody's after something. Cookie Monster, right? He's after something. What's he after? And then, of course, right, see, you people know. When I was in chapel, I was in the front row, and I just bellowed out and sing people like, cookie, cookie, cookie. And nobody else said anything. It was great. Incidentally, if any of the professors in the Ken Olson Science Center, and this is just a side note, are wondering why your nameplates now bear the names of Sesame Street and Winnie the Pooh characters, you're welcome. That was Mikey Potato and I. It's because we love you, I promise. We love you very much. But anyway, so a physics major, that's a little more dramatic of a sudden life change, right? And all of a sudden my identity, or what I thought my identity was kind of turned a little upside down. And I thought, well, there has to be some continuity. There has to be some base level of who Robert Mech is that's not dependent on what I do, but rather is what I bring to what I do. And after searching through the scriptures and listening to sermons and everything and consulting with people that I love and trust, I came to the conclusion that it's the image of God. That's what actually matters. That's fundamentally who we are. We are born with a divine imprint of our Creator that gives us a responsibility to reflect the Creator's love to those around us. And that gives us the confidence that if we know who we are in God, we know that it's not, up to us about whether or not we succeed. I mean, if God needed us to do a good job for Him, we wouldn't do a good job for Him, right? If it was just up to us. But if you think about, say, Moses wasn't the most eloquent person alive, but God still had him go in front of Pharaoh to say, let my people go. Gideon wasn't the bravest person. He was kind of hiding in a wine press, and the angel said, rise, mighty man of valor. And Gideon was like, what, God? And then, he still demanded 2 signs after, an angel appeared to him and said, do this. He was like, God, can you just, confirm this, please? What? But God still had him go against 100,000 plus Midianites with only 300 soldiers, because God is able even when we're not. And that confidence is better than sort of the self-esteem that we seek in our culture, where we just feel good about ourselves. No, we know what we're created for, and we know what we're capable of because we have God in us. And when we consider it this way, I think that identity actually has more to do with what we give away than with what we keep for ourselves. Now, when Jesus is washing the disciples' feet in John 13, he says that other people will know us, as in Christ followers, his disciples, by our love. Yes, by our love. Was that you, Bill? Thank you, Bill. Gotta love Bill. Round of applause for Bill, ladies and gentlemen. He's great. He's awesome. And in 1 John, we hear that God is love, right? But what is love when we do it? It's kind of an abstract concept. So to demonstrate love, I show you magnets. Sorry, I saw some startled heads in the back. Don't let me distract you from your homework. But here's the thing, right? What is a magnetic field? Now, this is a physics question, but, you hold magnets together and you can feel them pushing or pulling on each other based on how you have them lined up. But what's going on in the middle? What is this right here in between the magnets? It's a little difficult of a question to answer. And don't worry, the analogy here isn't that the magnets love each other and they want to be together, so they give each other a big magnet hug. The analogy's kind of dumb, but it's not that dumb. It's a lot easier to talk about where a magnetic field comes from and what it does. Where does it come from? The atoms are aligned in a particular way. I'm sorry to my physics professors, I only have 12 minutes here, so I have to kind of butcher this, but the atoms are just aligned in a particular way, right? What does the magnetic field do? Well, it produces the attraction, the repulsion that we feel. It makes the junk car stick to the bottom of the junkyard electromagnet, and we go, that's really cool, right? But it's a lot easier to talk about those things than what it fundamentally is. And I think a lot of times we're confused about love because we're trying to analyze it in the abstract, separated from any context to do with any particular person. But love is a transitive thing. It's something that we give. So, Where does love come from? It comes from a rejuvenated heart that has Christ at the center, that is willing to reflect the image of its creator. And what does love do? Well, 1 Corinthians 13 gives us a lot of clues. Love is patient, love is kind, or you could say it acts patiently, it acts kindly. What are some other things? 1 Corinthians 13. Just shout them out. Say it. Does not envy. Does not boast, right? Okay. Does not seek its own. That's one of my favorites. It doesn't seek its own at all, because love is giving away. Greater man has no love than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends. And when you consider God being love, he is love. God demonstrated his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So love is that giving of self. That's how I think of it. When I say, I love you to somebody, what I really mean is, I think that you're worth the best that I have to give. And when you can't really give of yourself consciously like that unless you know who you are in Christ. And now that leads me to my last topic that I've learned here at Gordon on a much deeper level, and that is worship. And I first learned this right off the bat, first semester freshman year in Marv Wilson's Old Testament class. This gentleman right here is actually sitting right over there. Make some noise for Marv Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Haugen saw the name Marv Wilson on my sheet, and he said, "Do you want the pen?" I was like, "Yeah." And he came out with the pens. I was like, "Can I have that one?" He said, "Oh, you actually want the pen?" I was like, "Yeah, I want the pen." But anyway, what is worship? It's what we're created to do, right? But what is it fundamentally? It's a lifestyle. We learn this in Colossians 3, that whatever we do, whether we eat, we drink, absolutely whatever we do, we can do it to the glory of God. And, you tend to think, wow, like, I'm almost 23 years old, I'm just getting out of college, undergraduate, I feel kind of insignificant, I haven't really done anything with my life yet. That's false. I know a lot of us are tempted to think that way, but we can worship right now with what we do right here every day. We worship every day with how we interact with other people. We worship every day with the way we study what we study and give it up to the Lord and say, "Lord, I want to glorify you with whatever I do with these studies," and in just developing my own mind to appreciate your creation to a greater extent. So worship is a lifestyle. It's not just what the worship band does, although they did a great job. Give them a hand, too. Make some noise for the, yeah. But it's a lifestyle. And two of the most impactful messages that I've heard in my time here at Gordon are from Dr. Rocks, who talked about how God does not draw straight lines all the time, right? They're just, and I can see this in my life too. If God wanted me to be just a physicist, he would have had me do, physics throughout high school, and I know that's exactly what I want to do, and then I'm going to go get my PhD and win a Nobel Prize and stuff. It's not that way. And Bill Mooney McCoy's sermon about one-hit wonders, right? Do any of you remember that? That was really cool. Ananias, he just took the scales off Paul's eyes and healed him and prayed for him and blessed him. And if that's all that he ever did, well, then he did it, and he did it well, and he did it for God. So no matter what we do, no matter what kind of crazy path it seems like our lives have drawn for us by God, and even if we only have a few important things in life that we're meant to do, we can still do them for his glory. And we often try to calculate the impact of our life, as if to say, well, how much am I really giving away, compared to other people? I mean, Norman Borlaug, the American geneticist who developed some disease-resistant strain of wheat, I think it was, that saved about 1 billion people's lives from starvation in the 20th century. He's known as the man who saved 1 billion lives. That's quite a ring. I mean, I haven't done that. But we can't calculate our impact that way. The widow gave 2 cents, right, which is all she had. And that was worth more than all the rich people who were just showing off with their extravagant gifts, because she worshiped with what she had. And you can worship with what you have today, too. And I can worship with what I have. And if anything, that's the most important thing that I've learned at Gordon. For example, as a physics major, I can worship as a teaching assistant where I get to help other people, where I get to give of self. There's a mentorship aspect there. As a tour guide, I get to show people around the place that I love and pray that their college journey goes well, and that they can discover who they are too. There's an opportunity for worship in every opportunity that we are given. Otherwise, God wouldn't give us the opportunity at all. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. So what is worship then, fundamentally? Well, if we do it right, it's everything we do in our entire lives. At least that's what I would say. Well, let's go back to our previous method of analysis. Where does it come from? What does it do? What does it produce? Well, it comes from a heart that's filled with gratitude for all that we have, for all that God has given us. And what does it do? Well, I would say it makes life worth living. Thank you all very much. God bless the rest of your semesters while you're here. Megan, ladies and gentlemen. Get it.
Hey, guys. So I was telling the chapel staff this morning that the only part I didn't have planned out was right now. So ironically, Robert came and brought dry ice and also had Jake up here, so I feel like, do I sing a song? But anyway, I'm super excited to be here. I was going to say Happy May, which is super exciting. I love spring. I always say that it's like the Jenny Craig of the year, where you shed 20 emotional pounds when it's 70 degrees out, and then everyone's out in hammocks, and you see half these people you didn't even know go here because it's really warm out. So super exciting that it's spring and it's the end of the year. I'm also really excited to be up here today, and thank you, Tom, for asking me to come share the stage with Robert and all of these awesome seniors. So it's just really exciting to be here. So to start us off, I'm actually going to have you, I didn't tell Tom this either, I'm going to have you take out your phones for a minute. Hopefully you actually have to take them out and they're not already out. But if you could take out your phones and open to your notes page. So it looks like, sweet, most people. And so what I'm going to have you do is write down the answer to this question, who am I? So I know that sounds like, that's not really something you can easily answer on the notes page of your phone, but if you could put, I'm a student, I'm a sophomore, I'm a senior, maybe you're a professor who's here today or a parent, but just take a second and write down things that come to mind if someone were to ask you, who are you? And then once you've done that, I want you to write down the question, where am I? So for you literalists, if you write down Gordon College, that is totally fine. But hopefully, if you can take a second to just dig a little bit and say, maybe you're in a season of just being super excited for summer, or maybe you have an exam today and you're feeling a little bit stressed out. So whatever it is, just write down, where am I? Maybe you're out of meal points and you're really bummed out, because I know that I am. So take a second to do that. So they say, and first of all, I could not have planned today better, and I think that God is super good, because so many of the things that Robert just talked about in his awesome message just overlap so beautifully with the things that were on my heart today. But they say that college is about finding yourself. So that can look super different for everyone, and I actually read a quote prepping for this that said, many of us have taken personality tests and other assessments. We learned that we are a lion, a beaver, an ENFP, an activator, a competitor, a high I, a high D. I don't even know what all of those mean. And then you couple it with things at Gordon. So you could say, I'm an RA, I'm a presidential fellow, I'm a sophomore, I'm a senior, I'm not a morning person, I'm a bad roommate, whatever it is that you might identify with at Gordon. And then you get the Enneagram in there, and there's just so many things that you can point to for your identity and that comprise who we are. So in terms of where are we, you can also answer that a lot of different ways. Maybe you're in a season of trial, maybe you're really stressed out about finals, maybe you're really excited to be done with school, you're graduating in 2 weeks, woo! And that could look a lot of different for everyone. Maybe you're reciting the mantra, C's get degrees, which I've definitely been telling myself in one of my classes. But for everyone in this room, I know that looks a little bit different for where you are. So last Friday, I actually had an entirely different message mapped out, and it wasn't this one. It's a lot easier to talk about other people, so I thought that I would frame my message around sort of highlighting different people that are here on campus. And what I've realized is that projects and schoolwork is nice because it's researchable, and you can turn it in and you can get a grade, or you can not turn it in and not get a grade, but regardless, time kind of marches on. But it's really different this morning to be asked to talk about your story and where you are, because that feels pretty vulnerable and it's a little bit different. So what I would love is for you to leave with an extra clock credit, maybe even your last one, and then a reason to believe that I have it a little bit put together. But I don't think that that's what I'm supposed to share today, and so in sharing my original message with other people, I was challenged to think about where I am spiritually. And the first two words that came to mind were lethargy and apathy, which I didn't think, like, that was a super cool thing to come and talk about for 12 minutes. But I even was talking to Tom the other day, and he said, Megan, there's a message in apathy, and there's a message in lethargy. And I think that's why I feel like that's something that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So what's hardest for me about being in that type of season of feeling a little bit indifferent is that that's not always how it's been, especially at Gordon. So looking back over college, I can tell that God was on the move all 4 of my years here. Wow. And those have all been marked by these mountain peaks of promise and then also a couple of valleys too. And they always say that it's easier to see God in the valleys because you're leaning on him and sometimes your hallelujahs feel a little bit weak. And it feels so good to have him carry you and not have your feet hitting the pavement for a couple minutes. So for example, freshman year was definitely one of transition. I literally titled my last TGC reflective essay, "There Are Lonely Moments Too," which was really dramatic. But I also think freshman year is super exciting. I remember walking into Lane one of my first times that I was here, and it was like those credit card commercials where everyone like pulls out their credit card because they have it for the first time. And they're like, everything's on me. And then I was eating ramen by November because I was like feeling so empowered with my meal points. So don't do that. But where was I freshman year? I was in a season of transition, and I was learning to look like I knew what I was doing, hopefully, which I think we're all still kind of learning to do. So sophomore year, I took on way too much. I definitely took on the sophomore mantle of overcommitment. And sophomore year, my grandfather also passed away. So it was definitely one of the highest and lowest years for me at Gordon. I was learning what it looked like to process in healthy ways, to grieve in countercultural ways, and what it looked like to unpack memories and put them away healthily. And I did that with a ton of awesome people by my side. So my staff that year, my friends that I had that year, professors and staff members were so helpful in those times that were a little bit tricky. But where was I sophomore year? I was in a season of learning to lean on God's joy for strength. So junior year also marked some of the highest and lowest for me at Gordon. I came out of a really long-term relationship, and that was definitely hard and left me with a lot to grapple with, but I learned to see God in the little things. I had an awesome apartment of really supportive people that totally helped me through the things that I was going through. I went to Singing Beach a lot, which is the best because everyone brings their dogs and they like let you pet them, and it's just super fun. And I was definitely learning what it looked like to find joy in the things that were around me. And I also made some of my best friends during this time at Gordon, too. So people that I know that I'll have lifelong relationships with, for sure. So where was I junior year? I was in a season of newfound singleness and refocusing, but I was also learning that there's so many good things going on around me, and breaking up doesn't mean giving up on finding life and joy in the things that are around you. So you can see that if I was asked who I was at different points in college, I would have answered with a lot of different things. And you can also probably see why it's a little bit frustrating to feel like I'm in a season of indifference when I can see God's fingerprints of grace and of joy all over my experience here at Gordon. So at the end of my junior year, I had the chance to go to a trip to Rwanda, which was amazing. And I remember sitting one morning eating breakfast, and there's like this beautiful sunrise, and the city is absolutely stunning, and I'm like drinking Rwandan coffee, and I have this great cohort of people that's on the trip with me, and I'm feeling so frustrated because I was grappling with all of these things that were 7,000 miles away, and all of these things that were weighing on my heart. And I remember God pausing me in the middle of that morning and saying, Megan, where you are isn't who you are. Who do I say that you are? So I needed that reminder just as much today as a senior in Wenham, Massachusetts in a season of apathy as I did 10 months ago in Rwanda in a season of stretching. I needed to be reminded that who I am is not where I am. And I think it's awesome that Robert was talking about who you are is what you can bring to whatever you're involved in. So I want to tell you this morning too that who you are is not where you are. So when I sat down to write this, I answered my own prompt. I said, who I am is, it's easy to say that, I'm a student, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a res life retiree. There's so many things that you can point to talk about who you are. And then where I am, I'm in a season of a little bit of spiritual lethargy. But here's the thing. Whether you're a freshman or you're a sophomore or you're a staff member or you're a professor, who you are is so much greater than those titles. And who you are is not dependent on where you are. Because let me tell you, God says that I am so much more than a student, and I am not my apathy, and I'm not my lethargy. So preparing for today, I read an article on redeeming spiritual apathy. So the first step that they talked about was affirmation, and then I literally stopped reading it there because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. But Gordon, I want to tell you who God says that you are. He says that you are a work of art. He says that you're alive. He says that you're his child. You are given a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. You are free from the law of sin and death. You are far from oppression, and you are cleansed. You are far from fear. You are born of God, and you are protected from evil. You are given the mind of Christ and the peace of God, and you are able to do all things through Christ. You are given a spirit of wisdom and revelation and eyes of understanding, and you are righteous. You are a new creature. You are God's child. You are born again, and you are a joint heir with Christ. You are submitted to God, given authority through Jesus to resist the enemy, and you are greatly loved. You are strengthened, you are raised up with Christ, you are healed by his stripes, you are firmly rooted, you are built up, you are established. You are redeemed. You are delivered from darkness, forgiven, and washed. You are chosen. You are the light of the world. How cool is that? Like, that is awesome. You are full of mercy, of kindness, and humility. You are an overcomer by the blood. You are not alone. You are an ambassador. That is who you are. So maybe you're in a season of joy, and that's awesome. And maybe you know those things through and through. But remind other people who might not be in that that's who they are too. And I also recognize that these reminders might not just tug you out of whatever season you're in, but in the Psalms, David said he'd continue to sing of God's goodness even when he's feeling it. So I encourage you, continue to sing of God's goodness because he defines who you are. And when we stop chasing or feeling, it doesn't mean that God stops working. So seniors, you're not your post-grad job. Hallelujah. You are also not your lack of a post-grad job. Juniors, you're not your summer internship. Sophomores, you're not your titles. And freshmen, you are not your New Testament grade or your major. You are a son and a daughter of the King, and where you are is not who you are. So to close, I want to read the Beatitudes in Matthew in the Message. It says, "You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God, he's food and drink, and the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right, then you see God in the outside world. And you're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family." Thank you, guys.